Welcome to Mr. Horror, where we bring you 3 true night shift alone at work horror stories. So, turn off the lights, grab your popcorn, and get ready for some hair-raising horror stories. As a security guard working the night shift alone at a large manufacturing plant, I had seen my fair share of strange occurrences. But one night, things took a terrifying turn. As I was patrolling the empty factory floor, I heard a loud banging noise coming from the storage area. My heart pounding in my chest, I cautiously approached the source of the sound. As I peered into the darkness, I saw a figure standing motionless in the corner. It was a woman with long dark hair and a pale complexion, wearing a white nightgown. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. Suddenly, she turned and vanished into thin air. I was left trembling with fear, unsure of what to make of the chilling encounter. On another night shift, I was making my rounds when I heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the second floor. I knew I was the only one in the building, so I nervously made my way up the stairs to investigate. As I reached the top step, I saw a dark figure standing at the end of the hall. It was a man dressed in old-fashioned clothing and holding a lantern. He slowly turned his head and looked directly at me, his eyes piercing into my soul. I froze in terror, unable to move or speak. The figure vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkened hallway. As I sat at my desk on yet another lonely night shift, I heard a faint whispering sound coming from the hallway. I cautiously made my way to the door, but as soon as I opened it, the whispering stopped. I stepped out into the hall and looked around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Suddenly, I heard a loud banging sound coming from the break room. I slowly approached the door, heart pounding in my chest, and opened it to find the room completely empty. As I turned to leave, I saw a shadowy figure out of the corner of my eye. It was a woman with long hair and a pale complexion, standing silently in the corner. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness once again, wondering if I was losing my mind. Working the night shift can be a lonely experience, especially when you're alone in a large office building. That's why when Tom started his new job as a security guard, he was apprehensive about the night shift. He had heard stories of strange things happening in the building at night, but he didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. The first few nights were uneventful, and Tom started to feel more comfortable. However, one night he noticed something odd on the surveillance camera. It was a figure moving in the shadows. Tom tried to ignore it, thinking it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But as the night wore on, the figure seemed to get closer and closer. Tom began to panic as he realized that he might not be alone after all. Tom tried to stay calm and rationalize what he was seeing. Maybe it was just a homeless person seeking shelter in the building, but as he got closer to the figure on the camera, he could see that it wasn't human. It was too tall and too thin. Tom's heart was pounding in his chest, and he didn't know what to do. He couldn't leave his post, but he didn't want to confront whatever was in the building with him. Suddenly, the figure disappeared from the camera, and Tom was left alone again. He didn't know what to make of it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As the night dragged on, Tom's anxiety only grew. He kept looking over his shoulder, convinced that something was watching him. Then, he heard a noise coming from down the hall. It sounded like footsteps, but there was no one there when he looked. Tom's heart was pounding as he tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination. But then, he heard a voice whispering his name. It was coming from the darkness, and Tom couldn't see who was calling him. He wanted to run, but he was frozen in fear. Finally, he mustered the courage to leave his post and run out of the building. He never returned to work there again, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still following him. I had been working the night shift at a call center for a few months when strange things started happening. It was always quiet at night, and I was often the only one in the building. One night, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, there was no response. I assumed it was just a prank call and hung up. But the same number kept calling back every hour, and each time, there was still no response. It started to make me uneasy. On the fourth call, I decided to answer differently. Instead of saying hello, I asked who was on the other end. This time, there was a faint whisper, and then the call ended. I couldn't make out what was said, but it sounded like a warning. I brushed it off and went back to work, but the calls continued throughout the night. The call center had a small team of night shift workers, but we rarely saw each other. One night, a co-worker named Jenny didn't show up for her shift. We tried calling her, but there was no answer. As the night went on, we started to worry. I decided to go check on her at her apartment, which was just a few blocks away from the call center. When I arrived, the door was unlocked and the apartment was eerily quiet. I called out for Jenny, but there was no response. As I searched the apartment, I found her phone on the kitchen counter, but there was no sign of her. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, just like the one on the strange calls from the night before. It was coming from the closet. I slowly opened the closet door and found Jenny crouched inside, trembling with fear. She couldn't explain what had happened to her, but she begged me not to leave her alone. After Jenny's incident, I started to notice strange things happening in the call center. The phones would ring with no one on the other end, and I could hear whispering in the empty halls. One night, I saw a shadowy figure in the corner of my eye. When I turned to face it, it disappeared. The final straw came when I was alone in the break room. I heard a faint whisper, and then the door slammed shut, locking me inside. I tried to call for help, but my phone was dead. I was trapped and alone, with only the whispers for company. To this day, I still don't know what happened during those night shifts. But one thing is for sure, I never want to work alone at night again. Thank you for watching these bone-chilling true night shift alone at work horror stories. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Mr. Horror for more terrifying horror stories. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified of our latest uploads. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.